Distancing.
This is the meeting of the Landmarks and Historic Districts Board for November 19th. Present, we have Samantha Malone, Vicki Kahn, Tim Ganettis, Susan Sherry Clark, Larry Jones, Jeff Gibbons, Bill Hines, and Stephanie Davis, and myself, Ed Wisnowski. Absent is Barbara Roberts and also Martha Green. This meeting is being conducted under town and New York State law, allowing for in-person and remote participations. Individuals may participate, undertake remote participation by activating the Zoom links on the town clerk's web portal page. Viewing only observation is found by activating the live link at the top of the page. Otherwise, one would have to tap the Zoom link that was found on the agenda. Online participation is being moderated by CTV and Peter of CTV tonight. For online and in-person comments,
recording in progress.
Individuals will be asked to give their name and hamlet of residence as they make their comments. With that, I think we can move to the agenda, which first item of which would
recording
be
in progress.
the approval of the minutes from October. Stephanie circulated the minutes that were prepared, and there were, I think you got a few tweaks along the way, which were then redistributed. And is there any further comment or additions to be made to the minutes? Hearing none, I move their adoption. Is there a second? Seconded by Samantha. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. We have a number of applicants, a number of parties interested in some of the applications tonight. And I think what we will do is we'll try to address the simpler ones first and the more complicated ones subsequently, so that in that regard, we will take up 102 construction application, 102 Noyak Path Watermill first, which is an application for an addition to an existing house. And let me see if I can bring up the application here. The addition is involves an addition to an older house by attaching an old barn structure to it and connecting them with a new structure as well. The house that's involved, we can just get a few pictures of the perspective here of the building.
And where is this barn coming from?
But we got, well,
Okay, you got, okay, gotcha. Thank you.
so this is the house, subject house that's involved. basically a rear of the house, I guess. Oops. So basically, we're interested in the exteriors, so we don't have to go through the interior elements of the project. My look at historic maps shows no house at 102 in 1930, and in 1938 aerial shows a house and a recently cleared area of woodland on which the house sits at 102. So the house, I believe, had an AYB of
1932.
maybe it was let me just see if 1932, I think it was.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, 1932. And let me just give also an indication of the overview where it's located for our understanding here. This is off Headapond Road in what is called Watermill. This is the house located here, somewhat surrounded by agricultural field and nursery fields, but also newly constructed houses in recent years. Larry, did you have some information about the possible age or background of this house?
Well, it's my understanding that the house had been moved previously from another site to that site. Particularly fine lot. It has a number of real good possibilities. The idea of moving a barn in is I think it'd be a nice addition to the property, and I don't believe would detract from the house that's there currently.
You're the owner?
Architect.
Do you know anything of the history of the house?
We did. It was originally located in Whitescott, but was moved here by my client's parents to that site. We used to sell vegetables out of that window when it wasn't opening at one point. They loved the house, and we are basically trying to adjoin it to a new link for the new barn, and leave the three sides leaving completely alone, and only the side we're looking at right now, where the door is where the kitchen is, and the kitchen is it's very tiny. And she doesn't want a larger kitchen than a barn, so that's how we decided to accomplish that. So but all the roof is the same. If you saw, and if I got time to see some of the drawings, it's a small link space that links the barn and the main house, and we did our best to try and minimize that connection to maintain the integrity of the house. And it's interior of the house, where the kitchen currently is, will be the pantry, and there's a new pantry directly behind the wall where that window is.
Is the connecting volume going to be 1 or 2 stories?
It's a one-story space.
1 story connecting.
I have some drawings.
Connecting the 2-story elements of the building.
Yes, I have some drawings if you'd like to see them.
Well, I think we had. Did we have some?
Yeah. There's elevations in the application.
Yeah.
But in any case, that was my question.
It's a one-story element, yes.
1 or 2 stories. And the barn that is being used for the addition is estimated at an age of 1820.
Approximately, yes. It's coming from New Hampshire, and I believe it's 1820s, 1830s. It's gonna be beautiful.
Or I know there are a couple of barns that have come into Southampton town from New Hampshire. I'm wondering whether they're selling them or not. Old barns. But in any case, just as a point of trying to know where buildings originate from as part of the history of the structures in the town. It's interesting to have that information as well. It's post and beam construction.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As well. There were no pictures provided of it, that we have.
The barn was taken apart by the barn builder, and I was given drawings of it, and and pictures of it, pieces of it, but not in its fully erected. It's already
Right.
been. It was diserected by the barn builder, and it's being currently cleaned and taken care of.
Okay, good. Any kind of questions or curiosities about a project like this? Any concerns?
I think the barn we're proposing to place it helps focus attention on the main entrance of the house. It's sort of lost right now visually with the barn not there. Very nice sight, but it's not clear where you enter the house. And that type of addition sort of focuses your attention to where the main entrance would be. It's an interesting site because of the nuisance. It's loaded with really good trees, which it's a good thing, but it's a hill. Because you want to work around them and maintain as many as possible. And I think they've done a great job at that.
Well, if there's no problem, we'll respond to the building department. We have no concerns, and good luck with the project.
Well, thank you very much.
Right.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Right. Okay, we have 35 Station Road as a application for construction, which, Bill, you did some survey work for this.
Yes.
So, let me get the application here. We want to, I guess, run through this.
Okay, so 35 Station Road is in one of the original settlement areas of West Hampton, originally known as Beaver Dam. The subject property includes an AYB 1890 residence, an AYB 1900 shed, and several other structures of more recent vintage. The proposed work includes additions and renovations to the 1890 residence and removal of an AYB 1955 mobile home. The subject property is not identified in the 2014 AKRF Town of Southampton Historic Resources Survey, nor is it in the 2004 historic profiles of Eastport, Spionk, Remsenburg, and West Hampton. There are two identified historic resources in the proximity of the property. WH5, the West Hampton Cemetery, which is located about a quarter of a mile to the southwest, and WH23, the West Hampton Long Island Railroad Station, which is located about a quarter of a mile to the northeast. The 1873 map shows Station Road, originally named Riverhead Road, had been opened to provide access to the recently constructed Long Island Railroad Station, noted as Depot on the map, but no development is apparent on the location of the subject property. On the 1902 map, the subject property appeared to be owned by Alexander Robbins, but no development is yet shown. On the 1916 map, a one-story dwelling is present on the Alexander Robbins property, and the adjoining property to the southwest is owned by Dennis Robbins. The subject property owner reported that Dennis Robbins formerly owned the property and worked at N.B. Rogers & Sons Lumberyard. The location of the lumberyard was about a quarter of a mile to the northeast, just to the east of the railroad station. He also reported that the dwelling was constructed in 1895 and that the shed was constructed in 1915. Neither of the Robbins family members were identified in the Long Island surname database. However, both names were found in the New York State Historic Newspapers database. The September 12th, 1896 Southside Signal carried a note documenting that Alexander Robbins had broken ground on the Depot Road, indicating that construction had begun on the dwelling on the subject property. This suggests an approximately 1896 construction date for the dwelling. The June 14th, 1919 Country Review carried a note about Dennis Robbins and his work at the Quogue Field Club. As it was his 16th year there, he likely began his job there in 1903. Other articles for several years before and after 1919 note his work at the Quogue Field Club and that he was the superintendent there, and some articles also document his prowess at playing golf. Letter to the editor in the 1987 East Hampton Star by Richard Post, a longtime Quogue resident, shed more light on the history of the Robbins family on Station Road. Dennis Robbins was described as a noted athlete, and his son, Dennis Robbins Jr., was reported to still live in the old family house near the Long Island Railroad Depot at that time. The Robbins family was reported to be descended from the Shinnecocks, and Dennis Sr. was noted to be a golfer. The most illuminating information came from about the Robbins family is provided by a column written by Tony Stevens, a well-known collector of West Hampton history, in the November 29, 1984 Southampton Press, a copy of which was included in the report. The column was entitled "Warm Legacy of Mr. Robbins," and it noted, Alex Robbins was a cavalryman and an expert handler of horses. He fought in the Civil War on the side of the North with the regiment of George Gordon Meade. George Gordon Meade was a United States Army Major General who commanded the Army of the Potomac during the American Civil War from 1863 to 1865. Alex Robbins was born in Rockaway, New Jersey in 1840, where he was remembered fondly. Alex Robbins drove the coal wagon for the N.B. Rogers Coal and Lumber Yard. He was brought to West Hampton by Dennis Halsey of Onak, from whom he served as coachman for several years. After the death of Dennis Halsey, Mr. Robbins worked for Julia Reeves. Alexander Robbins was the first black man to own a property in the West Hampton area. He and his wife, Eliza Hutchinson Robbins, built their home on Cook's Lane, now known as Station Road, where Dennis Robbins Jr. and his family lived. There, their children, Sadie, Louise, Dennis, Henry, Marianne, and Mildred were all born. Eliza Hutchinson Robinson was born in Richmond, Virginia, and she came to West Hampton as a laundress with her mother, Isabel. Belle, as she was called, had been born a slave to the Hutchinson family of Virginia. In about 1878, Eliza's mother, Isabel, married John Smith, a Poospatuck Indian, who was an educator and a farmer. John Smith taught school and worked for Stephen F. Griffin. Alexander Robbins is noted in the New York State death records to have passed away on December 2nd, 1924. None of the Robbins family appear to be buried in the West Hampton Cemetery, and Alex's final resting place was not identified. In some of the pictures, the exterior, there's really no historic fabric remaining, and really on the interior either. You can't see any of the roof structure because the second floor of that portion of the house is built under the roof, and the sheetrock is right on the cathedral ceiling, so there was no access to the roof framing. You can see the floor joist, the girder, and some locust posts in the basement, which again indicate like an 1896 construction date. Although the locust posts have been replaced structurally, they're still there, but they've put in steel posts alongside of them. And I guess in leveling the house, there's now enough room above the post you can slip your hand in. The posts really aren't functioning, but nice to see that they're still there. Okay. So the subject property appears to have been initially developed with the dwelling in 1896 by Alexander Robbins. The subject property is clearly associated with the Robbins family, which is known to have occupied the property in 1896 and in 1987. More research would be required to determine the ownership between those years. This property does not appear to meet any of the criteria for consideration as a landmark under the Town of Southampton Code. Proposed elevations of the dwelling were included in the report and show the addition, which is substantial and is noticeably taller than the original dwelling. It does change the character of the modest dwelling. There does not appear to be any historic fabric remaining on the exterior or interior. The addition of the covered porch was done in 2016 and previously changed the character of the front of the house. This covered porch will be continued across the front of the proposed addition. The covered porch on the sort of south, which is the sort of left rear portion of the house, also appears to have been an addition of a porch, which was then later enclosed. As the house has already been modified, the historic fabric has been removed. I don't feel that the Landmarks Board should have any objection to the proposed construction.
So, any other feelings about what Bill has recommended? I, total agreement myself with that too. Without any other concerns to be expressed. Would you like to say something?
No, I was pretty amazed at all the information that you came up with. That was very impressive.
Yeah.
And eventually it should follow the path through the building department back to your email box. So,
Very good.
okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so we will respond to the building department with no concerns for that.
Well, one just minor note, when we bought the house, they had a sign out front that said Robin's Nest, which I thought was very, very descriptive.
Yeah.
Does the sign still exist?
The kids wanted it, so we sent it to them. The kids are our age.
Out
Dennis's
the Robin.
children.
Right, oh, to the Robbins.
Right.
Dennis's
Okay.
children.
They
We
asked for
sent
a
him
sign,
that.
so we
Good.
sent it to them.
Very good.
Yeah, one of the articles did mention that the house was called the Robin's Nest, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for the information too. Okay, with that, we have, is there any other specific application that anybody, besides the ones that I've already collected? That is, okay, without that, why don't we go back to the agenda and deal with the certificates of appropriateness, which I think for the most part, at least two of them are relatively simple. We received an application for 2422 Montauk Highway, Bridgehampton, which is proposed renovation of a commercial building on Main Street in Bridgehampton. This is the one across the street. Let me figure out how to cross the street here and look to the other side. This is the subject storefront that's involved. At the moment, it was a Compass real estate office. It sits next to the other half of the building. This was formerly one building, and then it was subdivided as a property by putting a wall down the middle of the building sometime maybe in the 1970s or so. On the western half of the building on Main Street in Bridgehampton is the Eddie Arthur Hair Salon, and they wish to also create the environment for a hair salon in the east half of the building. What it involves is taking out some walls and installing a staff kitchen area and a few other modifications. It's in the rear of the building, so you would not see any effect through the windows of this portion of the building. And in addition, since it's on the dealing with the interior wall area that separates the two halves, where the walls would be rearranged for the accommodations that they want. I think there's also a hair washing basin that they want to put in as well. There's no exterior impact that's observable from the interior construction that is taking place. So that's number one. So, Susan, you have something?
Could you refresh my memory if it's interior, why we need to review it for it to?
Well, it will confirm the fact that there's no exterior impacts, and if and we do know that sometimes things that are applied for often wind up in a different form than.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank
Okay,
you.
so that's the principle here.
Are there two front doors to the building?
Are there two?
Two front doors on
Yes.
separate, will those stay?
Yes, there's no
There's
change. It's basically rearranging the rear of one side of that building, yeah. So if there's no problem, we've all had the applications passed under our noses, and nobody has found any other concerns. Why? We should have a motion to issue a certificate of approval.
I so move.
So Stephanie moves. I will second it. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the motion is carried. Now across the street, back to, I should have started with 2415 instead. This is a yoga studio at 2415 Hampton's Hot Yoga. We visited this building about a year ago for an internal renovation to make offices on the second floor and a conference room some time back. This application is to take out basically some plumbing fixtures and change a wall in order to make some changing rooms, two changing rooms for the yoga clientele. And again, in examining the application and the plans, there is nothing that shows an impact on the exterior features of the building. So is there any concern to be expressed here? Then I would move the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for this application. There is a second by Stephanie. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. The application is approved for a certificate of appropriateness. The third certificate of appropriateness for Bridgehampton's historic district is 2252 Montauk Highway, Bridgehampton. We had a preliminary exposure to this, if you recall, back a couple of months ago. We offered some suggestions and concerns to the project. So the project is located at the corner of Butter Lane and Montauk Highway in Bridgehampton. And hope this is Butter Lane. This is the corner, I guess. Which way are we going here? We got to go here, up further towards Montauk Highway. And as you remember, it sits next to the property of Loaves and Fishes, significant retail operation in the town. Let me see if I can then bring up I didn't bring up the 2252 just to give an overview. Sean, you want to begin?
Sean Leonard, the architect for the application. So what we're looking to do here is we actually have, it's a piece of property in which on the corner of Montauk Highway and Butter Lane will be 2 retail spaces. I have some, I don't know if you have copies of drawings or not. I have drawings, if it helps.
I think they might have come with the application.
No, I don't know, but there necessarily changes. There were some comments that the board had made that we tried to address.
I just have a quick question. As we look at this, you might point out if there are any changes in this plan from what we saw the last time.
So from what you saw the last time, one of the comments that was made was the building that was on the corner did not have a door that faced Montauk Highway.
Okay.
We had both doors because that's a retail building and there's 2 retail spaces. So those doors were facing Butter Lane. We did add a door on that corner building so that now both retail buildings have doors that face Montauk Highway, but the one on the corner faces Montauk Highway and also faces Butter Lane because it's on the corner. There was a comment about the pergola, and a pergola was something that actually was preferred by the planning board. We've been through the planning, we've been through zoning board, and we've been through the architectural review board on this application. So you are our last board as we're presenting to you.
Where's that pergola?
Yeah,
Where's it
there was a
located?
pergola that actually was
Between the two?
between the two.
Okay, that-
Yes, between the 2 buildings there. You know, and we see that as a, probably some vines will be growing up on there. There'll be some benches below there as people, there may be even some, tables there so that this way, as these buildings are being used, if they need to have a spot to sit down and have lunch or something, it can be kind of a, all part of that whole space.
You've also added doors and windows, which I believe one of the criticisms previously was that there was the pergola and just blank walls on either side, so there was no activation of the space, and it was just one of those.
Yes, in
elements that
fact,
was there
you would point, so there was always windows there, but they weren't shown on that set of drawings that you guys had received.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure that I got those windows and doors highlighted So they do empty out into that space, so there's just not a solid wall, that's right. So the retail spaces would also look out into that, and per your comments as well.
Can you enter off of that? Off the pergola, can you enter?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's correct. So you can enter the retail spaces right from that pergola. So if you walk down there, there's some windows that'll look into the retail space as well as doors that'll enter into that space.
Okay.
The other concern was, I believe, because on the back portion is the residence. Now, there was some concerns about the parking of that residence, the parking coming up to the side of the residence. That became a factor of when we were before the zoning board and with the planning board, the neighbors had requested that we not have the parking along the northern edge of the property there, and they wanted it moved away from their properties. So the only place it can go was next to the residence, which is something that the owner is just, it's not originally wanted, but it's something that we had to kind of give into in order for us to meet the parking requirements that the planning board requires, and also to satisfy the neighbor's request. So.
But it still faces, of course, doesn't face what we talked about, Butter Lane and.
Right, so if it faced that way, then we'd also have two curb cuts. We only wanted to have the one curb cut that was coming off of Butter Lane. So when you come in that one, then you have an entrance that goes right into the house there. And so that's what kind of returns it. Plus it then gives, if that's the front of the house, it gives the northern part of the property as a yard at the back of the house. And the planning board actually wanted that. That was part of another request that we had from the planning board.
It still appears odd to me. It appears like pulling up to a commercial hotel with a canopy type thing, where you go in and check your luggage. And
It has changed, and the detailing is.
I think we talked
it's a little
about
more
two
subtle
people just not
domestic
knowing where to go.
Yes.
than it did before. It looked very commercial. Doesn't look quite so commercial.
Yes, in the hopes is that, it'll all be very residential. The landscaping is going to be residential. It'll be shingle style, and the idea is just for the owner would have a place to be able to pull up and park their car. There's no garage on the property.
Right.
Not that we can have one.
We'll
There's no
most likely end up having barricades there or something that will live there, except when they want to move them.
I just see people making U-turns in there.
I
People
think
do
it's too
that.
bad that you have to have the parking jammed up next to the building on what looks to me like the east side, but that's what you gotta do.
It was a concession that we had to make when we were dealing with
Neighbors.
the neighbors.
Yeah, and
Correct.
the nice part is you don't see really any of this parking from the street.
You will not.
Yeah,
It's all going to be.
actually, it will look nice from the street.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I think it's a
Very,
nice
very nice.
arrangement.
In your dealings with the planning board, did they ever raise any questions about the amount of square footage? You have 59, total of 5,940 square feet of office space, which if it was in one building would require residential space in a building. And that kind of was originally the master plan for the historic hamlet of Bridgehampton, adopted in 2004. Did the planning board make any reference or have any concern about that when you dealt with them?
No, not at all. In fact, they actually liked the idea that we kept the buildings more residential and small in scale and size and not have a large building sitting on the corner.
But the question was, it eliminates the need for residential space associated with an office building. And that was not a question that the planning board ever, okay, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Carl Benacasa, 860 Montauk Highway, Watermill, New York, for the applicant. Good evening. Yeah, that condition in zoning code is when the building is in excess of 4,000 square feet. These are under that. And so it is not a requirement of zoning. There was a discussion of board under the previous application for development of this site. related to that. One of the major concerns with that application was the impact on septic and the fact that the on-site septic was insufficient. They had to bring septic in. So by establishing it this way, the board was, like Sean mentioned, was happy because we eliminated the need for that residential component by separating these two into two separate buildings, thereby minimizing the demand on septic in the area. So to answer your question, that was a discussion in the previous application. It is what geared us towards development of this application in consultation with the planning department and the board. So the need for the residential components with respect to the commercial buildings was eliminated. In part to accommodate concerns with septic. Yeah. In the previous iteration, there was a restaurant there. I don't know. I don't think it didn't come to this board necessarily. But that with the residential component put a great demand on septic and a great deal of massing at the front of the property. So this revised design was actually done in consultation with planning, both the board and the planning staff, to come up with this. So yes, that was part of the discussion in formulating this plan, and they were happy with it.
So with respect to all the concerns that we had expressed previously in the warm-up session prior to this, is there any problem with the way in which it's been altered? That anybody have any feeling on this?
Well, I think that, they heard the things that we completely hated. There was some attention paid to easing up on some of the grimness of that passageway, and it's now got a pergola and animated by windows and doors. The portico share to me looks, it doesn't scream. The back building now looks residential, completely residential. And there's enough space between them. And I don't know, it seemed like the other portico share came further. It just seemed bigger. This looks better.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent use of the site. I can't believe there's a lot that's come down to us in this day and time. It's basically a jungle. It's been on that corner for as long as it has. Matter of fact, to me, it'd be a nice thing to bulldoze the building on the west side of Butter Lane and that parking lot out in front of it and try something along these lines.
Your concerns with the parking were shared by the applicant, but we were forced with the parking requirements to do it. Yeah.
So on some of the elevations, there's some gable end windows and things. On the rear of the building, the north side, which faces the house, there's just sort of two blank doors. Is there any way to do some fenestrations there just to kind of lighten it up a little bit?
Yes. You're talking about the
rear elements?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So some of the other elevations, there are some windows up in that. I know there's not a set floor there, but it just gives you the feeling that
It's
there's
like
something.
you're in town. It's not like a
Right.
grain.
To give it more of the residential.
Right.
It would be more pleasant for the occupants of the house to look at it.
Yes.
Right. Plus, if you park there, you're gonna be facing this, what are now essentially blank walls of the,
Right.
of the back of the building. It's not very
Good point.
welcoming.
I think this is much improved. So this is the same set as was presented to the ZBA on the 12th?
That is,
Right,
Pla-
so ZBA across,
it has been CPA on,
Oh, I see. Who,
What difference does it
for on 11/12, it was ZBA or planning board? Planning.
planning. Yes.
No, 11/12, 2024. Planning board.
Anything further to be dealt with here? Everybody satisfied? Looks like it.
The resident's shaky, but I mean, the main
So,
street, I think, is
question
more
then
important.
is there a motion to issue a certificate of appropriateness for the plans as made? Tim?
People comment or ask questions?
Yes, people can comment, and actually,
Is this a public hearing?
it's not a public hearing, but on a certificate of appropriateness, public hearings can be held. So, if you are,
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I just want to know a little bit more about it, I just have a couple questions, yeah.
well, take your opportunity for public discussion here.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so yeah, I'm Tom Watson from the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I live at 89 School Street in Bridgehampton. So I'm just curious, do you have what it's going to look like on the Butter Lane side? So that's the back.
You do have,
Yeah, I just wanted to see what that looked like.
it would be the western elevation.
And the reason I'm asking is because as you come from the west down Montauk Highway, this gentleman was saying there was another property on the other corner with the parking lot in the front. So as you're coming down Montauk Highway, because there's that parking lot, you have what I call a nice view of what I call the Butter Lane side of the building. So I was just curious what it looks like. Oh, that's the side?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so. Okay. And then the siding, is it going to be the same cedar shake siding as the current Loaves and Fisher's buildings? Okay, so it's going to look like that.
Correct.
Okay, so,
White trim
okay,
and cedar siding.
so I'm happy with that. So I just wanted to make a comment. The reason I think I and the Civic Association would be concerned, obviously it's in the historic district, but it's in the historic district, we all know there's what I call 3 major intersections, and this is one of them. And even though the historic district starts at the Dime Savings Bank, further west, I think when people are coming down Montauk Highway from the west, sort of coming towards the downtown, it's only when they come to this intersection that they're kind of like, oh, I think this looks like a historic district. They don't even need a sign. There's the Methodist Church. There's what I call a English colonial style house. It's probably very old. So that intersection is very important. I think you would agree, Ed, in terms of people entering the town. So that's why I was just curious what it's going to look like, especially from that side, especially because of that other corner property that has the parking lot. It offers a view of that side. So the side is very important. So yeah, it looks pretty good. Yes. So it wasn't that bad, right? Just some clarifications. All right, thanks for that.
Okay. So Tim moves for an issuance,
I'll second.
seconded by Jeff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, okay.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Approved. And thanks for the information and the presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, Ed, should it be with the gable windows in the rear rather than the?
I think that was advised, not
Okay.
prescribed. Yeah. And we'll mention it, I think, if I remember. Okay. Next on our agenda, let's deal with let's try starting with Casabasso.
I've gone through everything that I saw on your notes.
Let me just get the material up here for our purposes. Whoops. 59 Montauk Highway, West Hampton. This famous property. We have an application for landmark designation for 59 Montauk Highway in West Hampton, popularly known as Casa Basso. And the application is from the town of Southampton through the Office of the Community Preservation Fund, Community Preservation Department, rather. And let me see if I can get the material up, which has in this case, the report is attached to the application. So, in the other one, the application was separated. Okay, so we will. This was prepared by our town historian, Julie Green, and this application is in the prospect of the ability for the Community Preservation Fund to make a purchase of the property for historic preservation purposes. And can you do an explanation by memory of the
Sure.
Because public would not necessarily know what we're talking about.
Right. Good evening, everybody. So this structure, which we now know as the Casa Basso Castle in West Hampton, was built in 1902, 1903. It was built by Theodophilus Brouwer Jr., who actually was an artist who first came to East Hampton in the 1890s with an art class, and he came out and he was a kind of a jack of all trades. He did a whole bunch of different things, bicycle repair, watch repair, and also started his middle lane, pottery. In East Hampton, he met a school teacher named Sophia Rogers. She was the daughter of David Rogers, who owned this property at Beaver Dam Creek, which is where the castle is at 59 Montauk Highway. So in 1902, they bought the property, moving from East Hampton with bringing his pottery to West Hampton. He built this by hand, by himself, supposedly dug the foundation. He was, as I mentioned, a kind of a jack of all trades. So he put this together. This is brick and concrete. He was well known for his use of concrete. He actually built concrete boats. He was kind of an artist in the arts and crafts movement. There's his advertisement for his jewelry and watch repair, and he did bicycles as well in East Hampton. So he moved on to his wife's family's property on Beaver Dam Creek, and these are some examples of his work. He developed a glazing technique that he kept quite secret about, and these are some of his pieces. These are shown. These are held at the Met and MoMA. Many museums throughout the country have his works. They are hard to come by, and if you are a collector of this arts and crafts style, you're not a collector unless you have one of his pieces in your collection. So very well respected during his time. Not only did he build this castle, this medieval fortress-looking castle, but he also had a statuary sculpture garden. You're probably all familiar with the statuary along Montauk Highway, which is completely iconic. The Cavaliers, the rearing horse. A lot of them are in just different states of disrepair. Some of the buildings have been removed over the years. It was a much larger property when he owned it. And that's a nice example of what it looked like in the turn of the 20th century. The castle in the background and some of the statuary His children, he had 2 children, and they became kind of the models for a lot of his things. He also has artwork and sculpture throughout the town. During World War I, they commissioned him to do some statuary around the local area, which there are 2 there. One is in Moriches, and the second is in front of the Eastport School. And that soldier on that sculpture to the right is actually his son was the model for that. And the one thing that I like about, I mean, it's an iconic structure architecturally. It's kind of an interesting thing. Those other pieces are, he was commissioned in Palm Beach, Florida to do some work, so you can kind of see the same sculpture. He's got crocodiles and all sorts of aquatic animals in those things. I don't know if this still exists, so it's nice to see that many of his statuary still exist in West Hampton. Also, John Duck's restaurant had a bunch. No one's quite sure what happened to that statuary. There are some pieces on the property to the west of Casa Basso that were either destroyed or covered. There's a couple of mounds of things. So, and the one thing that I enjoy about learning about these people who have done incredible things here locally, and these things become part of our landscape and iconic. And if you drive down Montauk Highway, you see these, and it's become something that everybody's familiar with as a landscape and a vista that we get to see here. Is that he opened up his studio and his property, this garden, the sculptures, for people to come and see. So he was community minded. He got very upset. There was a newspaper article that said that he didn't allow people to come, and he was very upset about that he did want people to come to see his work, see his studio, see his pottery and his sculpture garden, which he called Pine Walled. So I like when you do research, like you've all done, where you can actually find their names in the newspaper and things that they've done. They weren't just summer residents and just came here and you never heard anything about them. These were people that actually gave back to the community. And Broward died in 1937. Actually, he died earlier than that. What's that? 32.
Jude, was part of his facility behind the car dealership?
There was part of his of Pine Walled. Some of his structures were behind the car dealership. Those were demolished. That one structure, which is a tower, was demolished, I think, in 2016, somewhere around that. Yeah, it's you can see it in the aerial, and then it's gone in 2018. So, which is completely unfortunate. The fact that it was behind the dealership, nobody saw that structure still standing there. So, it's unfortunate that that's missing. But he was kind of the transition in the art world that kind of began in England, where the Art Nouveau and the arts and crafts, where your designers and workmen started working together and doing these different things. And he is the perfect example of that. Real hands-on. And then, so then after his death in 1932, the property was sold to the Basso family, Frank and Celestina Basso, who actually were in Bridgehampton. Their original restaurant is Basso's, which is where World Pie, now the new restaurant, the new Italian restaurant that's at World Pie. That's where the Basso's original restaurant was. They left during Prohibition. They came to West Hampton. They moved into the castle. They ran an Italian eatery that is still in operation today on the weekends. It's still being run as Casa Basso. The restaurant building has been added onto and changed considerably. We think that might have been one of his kiln buildings where he did some of his experimental work, and it's now been completely enlarged at different time periods, and that building will not stay.
So intention of this project is to acquire the historic structures.
Mhm.
This structure is to be removed.
That's the large restaurant in the center.
Yes, the restaurant.
Yes, and so the castle, kind of in the foreground on the left side, that big kind of flat roofed building in the center will be removed, and then and the property just to the west of that, there's a small cottage on that property. Was the cottage that the family lived in? He built that as well. That is a private residence. It's owned by the daughter of one of the restaurateurs. When it was Renee's Casa Basso, Renee Mondini owned that. So so that's part of Pinewald, and she's got some sculpture and some fountains on her property as well.
So this does not show the the property is subdivided. I
Yes.
see. Okay,
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. All right. I didn't see the property line.
Yeah. So it's got 3 different target areas that it will be purchased under, which was open space, wetlands, and historic, or actually Village Hamlet Green. The wetlands is right on Beaver Dam Creek, which is kind of the epicenter of that Beaver Dam settlement.
So, excuse me, what's going to be demolished then?
The center, the large restaurant building.
The flat roofed building, essentially flat roofed building. Yeah.
What is the plan for stewardship of this property when CPF acquires it?
I'd like to see something in there, like a clay arts guild or something like that, something that can work with the mission, some art. But right now that is not, that we haven't really decided where that's going to go. Currently there are commercial there's a commercial entity in there. There's a bakery. And there are some, the interior has been completely changed. And I think if the town does go on and with this purchase and do it, that will bring it back. The main, inside the castle was a main staircase that went up, and the signage that's outside in the front, that's the Casa Basso sign, those pillars that hold up that sign, those are the original 2, the landing, finial things that for the staircase.
Newell Post.
Newell Post, thank you.
So we've all had the report forwarded to us for evaluation, and thank you, Julie, for giving an oral summary for public consumption as well.
Quick little summary.
Question, I missed it. Is there a steward for this property?
No, that's what we're just saying, not at the moment. It was still being, determined how it was going to be purchased and if the CPF was going to take it over.
This kind of property, I mean, I know the condition of those. I see the condition,
Right.
Every day pretty much.
Yeah.
Of those statues,
Yeah.
and the ones on the house side are definitely significantly deteriorated.
Yeah.
The ones on the castle side are better, but they do require a significant amount of specialized care. And I'm concerned. I think it's a good acquisition or a good property to be landmarked.
Right.
But I would be concerned about its long-term care and maintenance, appropriate care and maintenance, so that it does not deteriorate like some other unstewarded properties that have been acquired.
I agree with you 100%. I think we'll probably bring in artisans that can fix the sculpture.
We did not get or have an engineer's report for this structure, but I think one was done.
Did Jackie not send it to you?
No.
Did you go? I mean, everybody can basically walk around. It's a public entity, essentially.
Right.
Did you all walk around? Get a walk around?
But it is in sound structural condition.
Yeah.
from what I understand.
So the report, I don't have it on me, but yes, and I can share that with you. That the engineer that came that did an assessment was pretty amazed on what good condition it's in. Yeah. So no structural issues
Right.
that would be of any major concern. Just, some usual. Over the years, some of the owners
Stucco.
have decided to fix things and do their own patchworks and things like that, but not structurally. There's no issue.
I think one further aspect is that, not of the structure itself, but of Brower.
Yeah.
I think he might have come from a family of potters.
Yes, I think he was a Dutch Huguenot descendant,
Right,
and
back
yeah,
in
and
the Netherlands, I believe.
Right,
I
there
think,
were others of the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Brower first
productive
and-
of pottery elements.
Yeah.
And then, in all of his experimentation with the development of the coloration glazed
Right, that iridescent.
specimens,
Mhm.
right? He died with the secret. I don't think there's no record of any
Right,
practice to be followed for reproduction
right.
in any manner
Yeah, he seemed
of
to
what
have-
he accomplished.
Yeah, that was kind of held tightly to his vest. He didn't really, yeah. That was his and his alone.
It was mainly the glazes though, right? And
Yeah.
not the pottery per se, the shape.
Yeah, not the shapes or anything like that. It was the firing and the iridescent glaze that was his technique, kind of patent.
All these old guys seem to have died with their recipes. Moravian potters did the same thing.
Well, you have to.
A lot of those glazes are
you-
lost.
Kind of over the years and studying some of these things during this time period at the turn of the 20th century, they're using chemicals and things that are not healthy. They're toxic. Photographers, they were inhaling these chemicals. I'm sure, who knows what he was working with, and that's why we don't have these techniques today, because we know better. That will, posthumously we'll be talking about you, but yeah. So.
Okay. So with respect to then,
And I thank you all for the way in which this all works and in the speed and rush.
I mean
I
the juggling act.
Yes, I certainly, I know who you all are, and you all do such a wonderful job, and it's not my intention to, push anything along to anybody, but that being said.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Sure. With that, is there any further question on the recommendation for designation? I sent out some proposed findings just to inform people that the basis for any recommendation for standard is that we would have some recognition that it met one of the 5 criteria: possessing special character or historic or aesthetic interest of value, or identified with historic personages, embodying distinguishing architecture that might be unique or a significant innovation. It's work of a designer or builder whose work is significantly influenced in age, and because of a unique location or singular characteristic, is a familiar feature for a neighborhood or passers-by. So I proposed, and I sent out earlier today, that of the 5 criteria, I would certainly think that 4 of them are met. The historic interest of value as part of the cultural history of the locality and of the nation. The local cultural value is certainly Brower's World War I monuments in Eastport and East Mauritius as a minimum. I would also probably add the fact that his workshop open to the public as well would be also an educational and informational element, and I can add that as part of it. To the national cultural value is simply his work that was produced and is in museums and collectors' hands, I don't know abroad, but certainly in the United States. About historic personage, his work and craftsmanship is unique. There's no competition, as far as I know, for what he has done, and including the monuments and decorative aspects he provided for his Florida commissions that were demonstrated in the report. Is there distinctive architectural characteristics? I think the concrete construction is unique and innovative, and certainly a unique style in terms of having a castle, crenellated castle structure to it. You suggested the possibility that his work, that there might have been some, his work could be considered significant enough to have influenced an age. I think
Yeah,
you yellowed one of that as it, and I didn't find myself finding a handle for that.
Just from, do you mean his work has now influenced other artistic approaches, or?
Well, the structure, in terms of what the structure is, it's the work of a designer or builder whose work has significantly influenced an age. I would say, you know, there's no sense that people followed in his footsteps to do the same thing elsewhere.
No, I think he was alone in his.
And his uniqueness.
In his uniqueness,
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
I mean,
okay.
we don't have any other castles here in town.
So, okay, so the D is not a consideration, and you did not suggest that it's a familiar feature, an established feature of the landscape.
No, just that people when you drive in and see that,
Right.
drive out.
But
That it's a visual.
is it a familiar feature on the
yes.
highway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's up there with
So
the
we'll include that as well.
I didn't get to see, but some of the sculpture that was there, Quo Vadis, was one that is now just, I think, rubble under a pile of dirt on another property that CPF owns it. They weren't aware that that's what's under there. After doing some research and looking on aerials, those pieces were quite provocative for that time in the 1920s and 1930s. A lot of them were quite gruesome. They're birds and animals and people.
People can't hear you.
Oh,
but,
sorry.
So.
Sorry, I'm getting a little something.
In any case, that we'll look at the 4 A, B, C, and E parts of the code. Are you in agreement with these findings?
Yes.
Yes.
As I expressed them?
Yep.
And so they'll serve as a basis to send a recommendation for designation to the town board. Do we have a motion? Motion by Jeff, seconded by Samantha. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of recommending to the town board the designation? Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, that's done, and thank you on that one, Julie. 65 Old Riverhead Road, Hampton Bays. A place of significant note. Let me first ask, I think both Larry and Susan visited. Anybody else besides? Okay.
Brenda gave the tour.
Right. And the house has an age on it of, I think, 1856 or so. I think that was the AYB.
Maybe the little back portion.
Well,
I
the
was just rereading the material from 2014 that I had. That's
Right.
all I had.
Well, the question I'm asking with respect to that is, Did you have any sense that there was any 1856 character to the structure or its interiors?
You gotta look real hard.
Okay.
But
It's a
there's,
montage collage going from 1860 to the 2000s. Just a little bit of everything. Is that?
yeah, the discussion was the rear structure, a small one-story gable roof structure was perhaps original,
That's.
which is difficult, but I mean, it was a tiny cabin. I mean,
Yeah.
my house has a tiny cabin behind it that someone lived in for a while, so I guess it was pretty possible, but boy, it was very small
For.
with a porch on the west side, a shed porch.
Did you visit the barn and the outbuilding?
Yeah,
Okay.
two-car garage and a boathouse, and then the structure behind that was a studio.
It was a studio. It was actually, well, the barn was once a shed, right? It was like a large barn was the studio.
Yeah.
But then back behind that was a smaller shed that I guess the son
Maybe it was,
and
yeah,
4 people lived there.
stayed there
during
in the summer.
Nicholas.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's,
I think the garages and things were all built in their time, and maybe moved that one smaller one that's behind.
Yeah.
but I mean, you're talking, so even if you go way to the rear and so you're looking toward the house, so you see vinyl siding on several, you see a little bit of everything, but then
Replacement
there was
windows.
the stucco with the pebbles in it on the one side of
Yeah.
the boathouse, which is really the garage.
Yeah.
So,
The boat wouldn't fit.
with respect to your experience of the house and from what we know too with the report, the house does not have any real historic character or originality to itself that you can see there.
Parts, but you have to look because things were just built off of here, this was added there.
The exciting part about that whole property, which I didn't know about until the realtor got there, when she started explaining it to us, was the fact that this artist lived there but apparently was a noted artist, and apparently in Russia and Ukraine of all places. So,
Yeah. Well, we'll
and-
talk about that in a minute, so
Yeah,
we'll
okay.
cover that.
So,
yeah.
you're getting
So
back
I'm
to
just
the
interested in the
architectural-
question of whether the structure has, of itself, landmarkable character to it.
nope.
Well, I mean, once you got back to the studio, which was just a barn with a lot of art and a
We're talking
really
about the
nice-
house at the moment.
Oh, getting back to, so I'm talking the whole property, getting back to the house. Now, that porch that is enclosed, if you look at it from the road, it's an enclosed porch that was probably done by some family member at some time.
Yeah.
But that was his studio, prize studio, that he wouldn't let anybody work in after he passed away.
Yeah, no, I'm.
So, I mean, so, right,
We're
but if you
talking
look
about-
at it
yeah,
as just,
Yes, so
what
I
you're
get from
seeing.
you that there's nothing architecturally distinct and historic in the house as architecture,
I
as
probably
built.
saw a couple things, but I would have to pull those. There
But
was
they don't come
a lot
up,
to see,
yeah.
but,
Yeah,
No.
the Celotex brickwork.
Yeah. yeah, that was that way. But I mean, there were things, but I was surprised though I could look past a lot of that. I mean, I don't know what I was, I'd seen pictures, so what I saw didn't surprise me, but once I knew more about it, there was more the cultural aspect that was impressive.
We're talking strictly about,
I
The
know
building.
that, so
Okay,
I
so-
know that, so,
and
It-
this is the building.
I mean, the replacement windows, I mean,
Yeah, those aren't, the ones that appear to be 2/2s or new windows with plastic muntins in them. And there's an interesting collection of columns that they scrounged up from somewhere across the front.
They're not original to the house.
No.
Yeah.
And there are some, a
Inside.
second porch. This is an outgrowth of a porch that's behind it. And that one had two early turn columns.
Yeah,
And
that didn't match, is that?
no, they didn't match. And
But that was in the studio itself. That is basically what you're seeing is what we saw.
Well, this is more of the historic pictures of
oh, that's interesting.
the house. I'm not sure.
Does that show that front porch is open in that picture, I guess, huh?
No,
Maybe they just moved the columns around.
Okay.
That-
There
see,
is a,
Without
Rear-
having
that's a
any
rear-
piece of
rear
paper to
extension.
look at, it's really hard to,
no, this
On
is
the
this is
right-hand
a
side,
front.
though.
we
the-
have nothing
But the
to
other side,
look at to
in front, you
compare
can see
it
those
to.
windows. Where the
I guess
window
that's
is
part
there.
of it, when you have those
has-
visual things, you can.
Has two cellars, cellar in the
Okay.
back with
Yeah.
one entrance, and that cellar door you see in that. Well, that's that guy's art. I haven't seen any of his art. Look, okay, that's interesting. See, that's the
That one-
earlier porch with the
that
turn
one
columns.
I saw in the 2014 materials.
Excuse me, I'm Ian Burlew. It's my grandfather's house. If I could maybe get up and speak, I can clarify some of the points you brought up, if that's appropriate at this point.
That is-
well, yeah, if you wish to explain something about just the house architecture
I
and structure.
can do that.
Yeah, sure.
My name for the record is Ian Burlew, and David Burlew is my grandfather. So I'm familiar with the house. As a child, I was there. I guess I was 13 when my grandfather passed away. So I spent summers out in Hampton Bays basically my entire life up to that point. As far as the house, you're correct. The small wing there, the oldest part of the house is, you can recognize it as old, but it's very small. The front part of the house, when it was wood shingled like that, had a, kind of pleasing look to it. Later, it got what they used to call Garden State brick face, which was artificial bricks molded on, and eventually the vinyl siding. So, the charm of the house is at the moment is not not anything terribly significant. As far as the columns, my grandfather at one point was doing a lot of surrealistic style paintings with classical motifs thrown in and whatnot. So the property at one point had the wooden columns like that, which were scrounged up here and there, placed in. They were paths through the wooded portions of the property with benches, where you could kind of sit down and reflect. He used to, take his easel out there and paint. The house was painted, numerous times. In his works, you can see the house. But in the picture of the house where it was shingled, you see it had the statue, which was done by Hiram Powers, who was considered in the late 1800s one of the best sculptors in the United States. He had numerous busts of Shakespeare and whatnot on concrete pedestals surrounded, around the property and that kind of thing. The studio was in fact in the front where those columns are in that picture. The small structure you were talking about at the far end of the property was actually a guest cottage. He had a number of people who would come out and visit, for a time or whatnot. There was no plumbing, and it was strictly a area where they could sleep. There was actually an outhouse on the property at that point.
And you use the guest cottage, loosely? Or the whole house was used as a guest cottage?
No,
The little,
the actual little structure in the back behind the
Right.
double garage, that was actually a cottage.
Yeah.
Ellen DePazzi, who wrote the book that the Historic Society, I believe, helped publish, she used to come out and spend a good deal of time in the summer there. She was probably the one who stayed there most often.
it had a screen door, or it has a screen door on it, so we figured it was
It had the older windows. It just, that, and I found that interesting because it made a very bohemian way. It was a guest cottage, but it's not what we would refer to as a
You're
guest cottage
thinking,
today.
yeah,
The
I mean, in
people-
40s and 50s, Hamptons is a lot different than
It was
what it is
pretty,
today.
pretty rustic.
Yeah.
But I found it fascinating, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I was very fascinated by
No,
particularly the
I
back
mean,
structures.
my honest assessment of what the house architecturally is the most charitable description you could give it is kind of depression chic. You know, I mean, it's you know, they say they want to restore it to 1940 standards or whatever. The standard of living at that point was a lot. There were no granite countertops, no stainless steel kitchens, and my grandmother didn't do a lot of cooking, so there wasn't any great attention to the kitchen. There was a couple of hot plates and things like that. So the house, and then it sat vacant for a number of years after my grandfather passed away. My uncle actually inherited the house, and he'd come out summers and stuff. He eventually moved out, I'm going to say in the 80s sometime, and he and his wife were already quite old at that point. They didn't, do a lot with the house.
Was the kitchen in that back addition, that one story? Would that have been the kitchen?
I believe it was. Thinking back on it, I don't remember anything with an actual stove or anything like that. I think the stove in the kitchen that's in the house now was added by my aunt and uncle when they moved out there.
Yeah.
My grandmother, I think, cooked, on a small hot plate. And
We saw a gasoline stove, like a Coleman stove, out in the which building was it?
Cottage.
In the little cottage that had the screen door on it.
Okay.
The one at the very back part.
Yeah, I haven't been in that in years. I know at one point it was stuffed to the rafters with the artwork and that kind of thing. But
Do you ever recall a boat? There was some discussion that there was the family had a boat that was kept in the house in the little building.
the little building on the far east side of
Yeah.
the, my father was always into boats, so I'm sure he stuck a boat in there at one point or another. But, a lot of that when I was a kid, the small part of the house, the oldest part of the house that had this stucco on it at one point, my father then put that shiplap construction or siding up on it, and then later it was vinyl
Yeah, we know
siding.
two kinds of stucco. One that sort of a pebble dash style where the little pebbles
The
are
pebble,
exposed.
yeah, was what it was. So it was, there was a grape arbor outside the thing. There was also a gazebo on the property, which I know the Arts Council says they want to, put the gazebo back up and that kind of thing. But as far as the house, I mean, I looked at the criteria. You had different categories and, architectural significance. I would say there's some history there, but it's not, that in itself doesn't justify the property.
But his studio was on the second level front.
The
of the house.
studio was on the first floor in the front.
First floor.
Yeah,
That front,
yeah,
that front porch.
front porch. It
Because
had been a porch, and
I
it
mean,
was, as you
this
said,
wouldn't work, but sometimes what they do is they pick a year and take the structure back to whatever year it was. But if you took that particular structure, the front back, then you would lose
His
his studio, which is the most.
yeah. I think the
I mean-
significance of the property is,
Well, I mean,
my
it'd be
connection to
him,
my
if he
grandfather
let
and his
nobody else
artwork,
paint
which
in it, it had to be,
And that was
Yeah.
north facing light, I would assume. Is
what's
the,
that?
the porch, did that face north?
it does.
Yeah. Okay, so it gets north light, which makes for a reasonable studio light. So.
Yeah.
So
He was actually
Not
blind
really
in one eye
lightning
too,
back
so
in
it
when,
that's
thank you for the information
Okay.
on the house. That
No, that was really helpful.
Yeah,
thank
helpful for the curiosity of our structural people there. Let me just say that the proposal that was coming from, again, this is a town-initiated application for landmark designation coming from the Community Preservation Department. And the basic suggestion, which certainly is one which I agree with, is that the reason for designation is associated with the personality and personal existence of David Davidovich Berliuk. And let me just indicate with some slides a little bit about this. He originates born in the Russian Empire in 1882, and comes from a family where there was a lot of artistic talent, including, I think, his mother also had some artistic displays in the city of Odessa at one point. But this is a picture of the father on the right, managed estates and the land holdings of minor and major nobility in his career until close to the Russian Revolution. The father died in 1915. This is, behind him is David Berliuk. This is his brother Nicholas. And Nicholas had, among other things, the misfortune eventually of being drafted into the Russian army and was killed in Thessaloniki, Greece in 1917, where there was a front for the war. This is brother Vladimir, who also went to art school in various places, including in the European capitals of France and Germany, in order to study art with the most up-to-date, so to speak, art movements, which we'll just talk about in a moment. I'm not sure, I think this is a sister Nadja, and this might be the sister Ludmila, and she went to art school as well and exhibited in some of the same exhibits as David did during the period of time, 1908, 1910, 1912. So a very talented, cultured family that existed. In Russia, there was, there's a montage of David Berliuk in the flowering of his artistic experiences. He became certainly known, as some moments down the road will point to. He had something of an outsized personality and a self-promoting of his person in the artistic networks of the time, associated with the formation of a movement called Futurism. And the Futurism movement had its kind of pronouncement in 1909 by an Italian named Filippo Marinetti, and he published a manifesto on the front pages of the French newspaper Le Figaro to announce to the world that tear down the old forms of art, up with the new, associated with industry, technology, and forget about realistic expression, using the right colors, using the proper proportions, using the right forms along the way. Berliuk, who took up this cause in Russia, became very prominent, organizing and attracting, as he apparently did all his life, other artists and writers. And somewhat at this period of time, while he still was in Russia, he basically thought of himself first as more of a literary person, a poet, more than a painter. He got into a lot of publishing and pronouncements associated with a circle of people. And one of the circle is here. And by the way, this picture of him on the bottom is kind of characteristic of the notoriety he earned in his lifetime in Russia. He would have painted animals on his face and would carry performance of poetry and speech making and lecturing in public settings, all with some form of this kind of, if you will, costuming for the act that was to be presented. This picture might actually come from a performance. The reason I say that is that because he's painted his face, he didn't walk around all the time, but in public when he wanted to attract attention, that's what he did. And to his, what would be on the right side of the picture is Vladimir Mayakovsky. And Mayakovsky is holding a little tag that announces his name. And it seems like there might, in fact, have been an audience for whatever recitation and whatever presentment would be taking place. I don't know who the gentleman with the mustache is in that picture. You can see, among other things, he was known for his colorful dress in the streets. Later on, when he was migrating through Siberia, in order to attract attention to his immediate exhibitions with his paintings, he would put on his colorful clothes and attract attention in the public square, and eventually have people brought into where his paintings would be, and be able to sell them as well. Ian mentioned that he had one eye. He had a glass eye. He had childhood injury, different versions of what caused it, but he had one eye, and that presented some problems periodically when he was being schooled in the art school, that he didn't, the art teachers didn't think he would be competent with one eye in order to do good painting.
But I read it saved him from the draft, so.
Yeah.
Good thing. I mean, in that respect.
So in any case, you can see here he sometimes wore an earring as well. All unconventional behavior designed to bring a new aesthetic to the world around him. So in his Russian period, this is one of the manifestations of a performance typical of this movement, filled with bold type, all kinds of unconventional communication, like the letters spelled out. The letters spell out futuristic in the big letters, but they're all juxtaposed in different ways. And in the middle here is, in Cyrillic, is David Berliak participating and performing in this moment. Below his name is Vladimir Mayakovsky, who I showed you a moment ago with the tag sitting there. And this is 1914, part of a kind of, quote, theatrical or cabaret type tour presentation that he would have been involved with. let me move on here. This is, again, with the top hat, which was one of his signature elements for a while, is Burlak with his brother, Vladimir, and a woman who also was participant in the movement, artist Alexandra Exter. Burlak also did pictures and films, probably the first avant-garde films ever done anywhere. This one is in preparation for a film that was done in 1918. That's Vladimir Mayakovsky, considered a great Russian poet of the 20th century. And on the left is David Burlak. The film they were working on was Not Born for Money. That was what it was called. And that's a poster for it that I found on a website. An earlier 1912 film does not exist any longer. Only a couple of frames that have not disintegrated from the film have been preserved. That one was called Drama at Futuristic Cafe number 13. And it involved, obviously silently, but it involved something of a dance with knives between two persons, which one of them winds up dead and being carried out. Not particularly a gruesome, not particularly a happy movie. Burlak was basically an entrepreneur and an impresario, arranging performances, poetry readings, other cultural events within a larger circle of people in the Russian Empire for a good period of time, up to about 1915, and that's the period called Russian Futurism. And it runs aground, so to speak, with the change in Russia. First, the revolutions of 1917, February and October, the October Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, which led to civil war. The Civil War also might have led to the death of the brother Vladimir about 1920 or so. He was associated with various what we might call militias, for just a shorthand term, involved in the Civil War episodes and fighting within Russia, and eventually was thought to be a suspicious person by the conquering Red Army, and thought to perhaps have been executed by him, but that was a story I've not certainly been able to verify. Burlak decided to 1919, 1920 to tour into Siberia and move to the east coast of Russia, eventually to Vladivostok with his family. Hard to believe that would have been an easy task. Along the way, a lot of hardships were reported in various accounts that existed for the family until he got to Vladivostok and managed to get to Japan. And Japan was beginning to open up to cultural movements and experience itself, the intellectual and artistic communities, and they had some sense of the Russian intellectuals and cultural elites being forward, radical in some cases, and they were sympathetic. So he found kind of a ready audience. And he arrived in Japan, and the newspapers began to pick up and publish his presence and his exhibits in Japan, some of them sponsored by businesses, some of them sponsored by the newspapers themselves. So he had a world of publicity to explore, and he stayed in Japan for 2 years and migrated throughout the cities, Tokyo, Osaka, Kobe. He had shows in, and he spent, I think, the winter in some tropical Japanese island in which, again, painting and his painter's eye basically was being cultivated, and made many paintings, sold them to get enough money to be able to, after 2 years, this is just a leaflet for one of his shows, and I got this from a Russian website, but shows a leaflet for a Berlioz show in Japan. He gets to the United States, I should say he gets to Canada, Vancouver, Canada, takes the train to Montreal, gets off the train in Montreal, gets on the Delaware and Hudson River to go south into New York, and is checked into the United States in September of 1922. When he gets to New York, he immediately integrates himself into the New York art scene very quickly. Has a show at the Brooklyn Museum of about 40 canvases or so in 1924, and that makes enough of a notice that he gains a lot of attention in the New York art scene, so that eventually he's, I didn't get to, one of the things I passed here, yes. In 1924, his big show is, of revelation is in the Society Anonyme, which is a modern art movement in New York City. This 1926 catalog is very, if I can get the, so this is his catalog position, and describes in the description how he came to be known as the father of Russian futurism. In his collection of associates and fellow artists and intellectuals and writers and so on, after a number of important exhibitions in Germany and elsewhere, he gets them to sign, quote, an official proclamation declaring him to be the father of Russian futurism. And it's one of the most successful labeling exercises, I think, in all of art. Very rarely do you find an artist being able to get a distinctive title or distinctive characteristic that will stick with them for their lifetime and beyond. So in New York, he finds himself in need of having to make some further distinction for himself. The father of Russian futurism is not something he apparently can impress people with in New York City. So he issues another manifesto. I didn't mention his earlier manifesto in Russia called "A Slap in the Face of Public Taste," which caused a big stir in 1912. This one is in 1926, Manifesto of Radio Style from the Universal Camp of Radio Modernists. And while he does mention that he is the father of Russian futurism and one of the founders of the Cubo-Futurist movement in France and Germany, he then goes on to do a lot of name dropping, which is also characteristic somewhat of art and literary culture around anywhere, including Georgia O'Keeffe, who probably was not in the vicinity at this period of time, and Alfred Stieglitz, photographer, and a whole bunch of other people. And what he declares is he's David Berliuk, founder of Radio Movement, painter, poet, orator, actor, and showman. His paintings were exhibited in various places. Radio modernists are those who determined not to be afraid of being understood by the contemporaries. And his purpose is to unite all radio modernists of the world. And he declares, I now assume the name of Radio Futurist, founder of the Universal Camp of Radio Modernists in the city of New York. That is quite a sales pitch for the arts in that time. That was quite something. And he moves on later on, Radio Modernists, into another variation, the fourth dimensional paintings, while he's in New York. Eventually, in 1941, he acquires through his son, with his son's help, the property we're talking about, 65 Old Riverhead Road. And therein, he follows kind of another pattern, his outsized personality and sociability. He begins to attract fellow New York artists, mostly emigre artists from Europe. This picture is from 1948. Berliuk is on the right of the picture. This person, I think his name is Alex Wood. This is Moses Sawyer, who was one of the artists, I believe. He bought a house further up Squiretown Road, north of where David Berliuk was. This is also a fairly famous emigre artist, Nicholas Tchaikovsky, and he bought a house eventually in North Sea and painted the marine landscape and other types of picture content. And this is another fairly famous artist, George Constant. Anybody recognize where this is from? It's outside the Parish Art Museum, yes. And the collection of artists, part of his weekend associations and sociability, very often in the summertime, where he would hold court. In 1951 or so, 52, I think he with his son bought or built a cinder block building that became the Berliuk Art Gallery. In the summertime, David Berliuk's wife, who I haven't mentioned, but a very significant person in the whole story here, she would sit and hold it open on weekends for the weekend trade of curious art seekers and tourists who might be attracted to the building. And this building still stands, I believe. I don't know. It's not part, the property was sold, I think. But it's not.
It was there.
It's what?
But this was subdivided from.
Right, it was subdivided
It's
from the
just-
original
it's
house.
just to the west of the
Yeah.
house. There's a new house in between this and that, but that still stands.
Yeah. And in the accounts of Nicholas Berliak, his son, who gave some descriptive content about his father, David Berliak, he notes that his mother, Marussia, was always at his father's side. And that's true in terms of almost anything that you can see. In fact, she was probably one of the most frequent subjects of his portrait painting, was her portrait. And I would say, you know, just as an offshoot here, when the Russian invasion of eastern Ukraine took place in the city of Kherson, they had some Berliak paintings, including a portrait, I believe, of Marussia, but they removed them from the city to keep them under protection as Russian cultural assets. So, you know, where that goes is another loose thread of history for the current events that are out there. But in any case, Marussia was an important person, and I would say that with that, this does not seem to me necessarily to be the studio.
No,
This
in
is
Tennessee.
this is
This is in Tennessee.
this is in Tennessee.
Yeah, this is at the Myron King
Right.
Gallery in Tennessee. So Myron King is the son of
Oh,
Walter
right,
King,
right.
who is the Liaison Hat Shop,
Right.
the milliner.
Right.
Of course, so Walter King is in Hampton Bays at the same time that the Berliaks are there, and this is I think 1966, so this may be a year before David passes on. They go to Tennessee so the King family were here in Hampton Bays. They summered in Tennessee, or vice versa. They spent their winters in Tennessee, and the Berliaks went, and he did a whole presented his work. The painting behind her by Marussia is a painting of a plantation, a big home that's down in Tennessee. He painted the structure that was down there. That was the whole art gallery. So very closely connected with Hampton Bays, and he went to Myron King's gallery. And Myron King's a whole interesting person from Hampton Bays too. But that's where they are.
Okay. Well,
You know, the realtor.
I had thought that they had spent some time.
Was that-
He was a traveler, and he had spent some time in Italy, among other things, and
Yeah,
had
that's I have the original postcard downstairs.
the postcard of
Yeah,
Positano.
this is a postcard of that photograph he was showing.
Yes,
That's the colored photograph. That's a postcard.
right.
That's the.
And on the back of the
It
postcard,
says, it's the Myron Liaison.
it says that
gallery.
on the back of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I've seen a
so-
different postcard with a different description.
Yeah, so it's Marussia and David Berliak at the Cheapwood Estate in Nashville, Tennessee in 1961. The Berliak exhibition was sponsored by Myron L. King's Liaison Galleries. Myron King was the son of Walter.
Okay. So with respect to that, it's really the biography of David Berliak that is the important reason for looking at the preservation and designation of the property. I also suggested in what I sent out earlier today that there was a cultural significance locally. Local people bought the paintings of Berliak and his fellow artists that he attracted into the area. I know, for example, that on the restaurant on Job's Lane, now closed, La Chef, that on the wall there were pictures by Nicholas Tchaikovsky that were collected by a local patron and hung in the restaurant there. So the presence of the Burlicks, the presence of their bringing the artists together, also had a significant cultural impact. And let me just bring up for the designation criteria to see if you are in agreement that of all the criteria that the reason for recommending a designation is partly that, if I can slim this down, my pad is here we go. That there is cultural significance to his presence, first of all. That the home, studio, exhibition gallery attracted artists. And if you look at their works, they often have and reflect the common rural and marine landscape of Southampton town. Among them, Nicholas Tchaikovsky, Moses Sawyer, Raphael Sawyer, John Graham, that was a changed name, but also a Russian immigrant. And the gallery provided for public visibility and sale of those artists into the local market. Also, Burliak exhibitions locally in the Parish Art Museum. I think the Parish Art Museum had a famous one in 1978, kind of opened up the world to the presence of Burliak on the East End here. There's also the element of national cultural value because his works are shown in repeated U.S. exhibitions and international exhibitions, significant ones, and also represented in collections of many museums. You go through I went through probably about 20 universities have Burliak, a Burliak painting. So he certainly has made an impression and imprint through that kind of distribution of the work. In terms of his historic personage as the father of Russian futurism, he was the major impresario and generator for the avant-garde movement prior to 1917, and thus a significant historic figure involved in the change of arts, not only in Russia, but eventually participating in the worldwide modern movement of art elsewhere. And to this day, I did check out Japan scholarship, and I won't bring it up, but there's a fascination in Japan with Burliak even to this day in terms of academic scholarship and the character of all of his work. And particularly, there's not many public, but his paintings of Japanese life at that time. So those are my assessments of the significance of David Burliak. And I wonder if you find them satisfactory in terms of what you've heard and what you've read from Julie, who also prepared, we didn't have to get into art criticism or art evaluation with all the paintings that you provided in the report.
And there are two paintings that the Met owns. They are unfortunately in storage. I was trying to get them. They have very tiny little thumbnails on their website, and they were trying to photograph them for me so that we could have them. But hopefully, if all of this goes through, we'll have reproductions of they're called, one is like from Canoe Place, and he's looking out over Shinnecock Bay painting, and then there's another one that's called Hampton Bay, in Hampton Bay. So those two I'd love to actually get a little good glimpse of what they actually look like. And his son, Nicholas, your uncle, he also painted, and he had a painting school on the property in the summers that he offered to students. So again, that element of giving back to the community. And both his sons, your father, David, and Nicholas, both served in World War II, and their names are on the monument on Hampton Bay, on Pompog Ave, across from the library. So
Nicholas was actually an interpreter at the Yalta Conference because he'd gone to the University of Idaho and studied journalism, and that was one of the things he did at the end of World War II was the Yalta Conference, was one of the interpreters there.
Just one other little, there are plenty of tidbits that you can add, but if you scour the internet, you will be overwhelmed by burlaic color and burlaic shapes and paintings. Very, very prolific in character. One of the things he did often was to repeat a theme, and this is two paintings done at two different times. This, what did I do here? I get off my, here we go. The blue version of a horse rider is signed in English, meaning after 1922. The one on the right, in the more red-yellow, is signed in Cyrillic, meaning it was painted in Russia. And he did that with many of his subjects and content painting. As a consequence, there's a lot of potential fraudulent claims for reproductions that can be made now with some of the higher technology for art reproductions. So the market for burlaic is one in which you would beware in terms of the possibility of some phony attributions and sales of objects that would be attributed to him.
Also to note that when he was traveling across Siberia, he was traveling with quite a bit of his artwork. What the family has said is that he had to leave a lot behind. So when he came to America and he had time, he would repaint a piece of artwork that got left behind. So he was quite prolific. And then he was repainting paintings that he had already done from memory. So that's what another problem with some.
He had a lifetime interest in returning to Russia, quote, Soviet Union then. And he did finally get permission to travel back in 1956. And he had an ambition to try to recover some of those paintings. He was not allowed to enter under the auspices of any arts organization. He had to arrive under the auspices of a literary organization. And he did get to go back to the Soviet Union twice before he died, but he did not get his paintings back. He also had a similar experience of having an exhibition in Havana, Cuba, under the dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista, and sent paintings down there, and they were never returned. And that too represents something of a loss in terms of the artistic production of the individual. So with respect to just dealing with the findings, did I bring those up here? Yes. That it's identified with a historic personage and with details that I can incorporate into the recommendation to the town board, and describing the cultural values of interest for David Burliak and his home. And given the presence of his wife, if we recommend a name, would it be satisfactory to recommend the name David and Marussia Burliak home as the landmark term for it? Okay. So, is there a motion to that effect? Moved by Tim, seconded by Jeff. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. The motion is adopted.
Just, will this be like uploaded to a portal so we can see the application and the report and go back on our own time and look at this information?
Is the-
'Cause I haven't seen the application yet.
The application is uploaded, I believe.
Okay,
Oh,
I haven't
did
got
you,
it.
wasn't
That was
uploaded?
back in October, and
Oh.
I don't, there was some, Nicole told me to give it to you two, and there was some. There was some
Okay,
confusion.
all right.
I haven't seen any links.
Oh, okay.
No, there's an extra.
Yeah, so,
That draft has changed even since October.
well,
so
we'll get
I
it,
can
I'll,
send that to you.
we'll get Nicole to set a file up, and either she or myself will upload the application and the material that we see here presented tonight. Okay? Okay, what else do we have? No, not yet. Okay.
And
I'd
if
just like to
anyone
say
is
thank you very
interested
much
in
for
a
the
tour,
summation
check
of
with
my
Brenda, there may
grandfather's
be an opportunity later
Terrific
in
job
the
of it.
week, so.
And I just echo that he did really have strong roots to the Hampton-based community. They had the art shows at St. Mary's, the Episcopal Church in Hampton Bays, Guildhall, the Parish Art Museum. He collaborated with a lot of the artists in the Hampton Bays group. My grandfather, Nikolai Sikovsky, kind of drifted back to more landscapes, and he did the local people, and he always had his easily be out painting. Everybody in town knew him. Kids would ride by on a bicycle, he'd pull them in and paint their portrait. He'd give talks and lectures on art, and he'd pull somebody out of the audience, and while he was talking, he'd paint their portrait. So he had a real connection with the community, and I think it's great that this is going to go through. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the information you provided too. That's very good. Thank you. No. Okay, so that done. Let us return to demolition applications. And you're in a hurry to get out? Okay, we'll take 18 Old Scallop Pond first.
They're gonna kick us out at 9:30. That's when the janitors go home.
So, okay, 18 Old Scallop Pond Road, North Sea. Proposed demolition of a garage associated with, quote, a circa 1870 dwelling. The problem of 18 Old Scallop Pond Road was that the building was not built there. It was moved, the house was moved there, and probably the garage was moved there.
Yes.
And do you know where the garage came from?
I do not know. All I know is that we're in the middle of renovating the house at the moment. And the house framing, you can tell by the age of the wood, that it's an older house. It's true 2-inch by 4-inch studs. It's very rough of the house itself. And the house was actually 2 parts. We started going into, we realized that it was 2 houses that were merged together. So they're not even the same, even of the same time period. Now the garage, the framing inside of the garage is much newer. They're 1.5 by 3.5 inch studs. It's probably, if I had to guess, it was probably something that was maybe constructed in the maybe early 60s, just from the look of the wood and stuff like that. True 2x6 roof rafters. So I didn't see anything that even remotely resembled anything of the same framing that went on inside the house.
And I didn't print it out for some reason. The design of the new garage, the windows are going to be, the design of the new garage, what are the windows are gonna be like? You're not moving this, you're demoing it, correct?
We were originally thinking of moving it. They don't need a garage this large, and then when we realized that they would have to take down some trees in order to get it moved, it became one of those things that wasn't worth trying to save a garage. And the trees are much more significant on that property, so we'd rather really keep the landscape of the property, and that was the reason.
I drove by and I just looked at it from the road on Sunday, and I took a few pictures, for myself. And of course, where it sits now, it sort of recessed back. It looks nice with the house. Not that you have to keep it, for that reason, but I did like the windows. I will comment, the one thing that did concern me though was the deck on the second story, the stainless steel. I went back and I looked at that old application, for that, and that's not what we're discussing. And it didn't list materials, but I made the assumption then that they would be wood versus. Is there glass panels on that, or just stainless steel and those little strings?
Right.
But that's another story. But I guess to me, it reminds me that when we look at these, that how important maybe requesting what materials, because what the picture I had seen looked like, a ball on top of a wooden post. So I thought, I went back and got it out and re-looked at it. Because I've heard comments from the general neighborhood about a concern, how that, how modern that looks on that older house. So that's my comment. It's a past one, but that concerns me what might happen.
So the garage is to remain, to have the same wood shingles that's on the house, be painted white to match the house, and it will, be the simple gable, just like the house. Everything was the new garage at this.
What kind of doors?
The garage would be a cottage looking, door.
One car garage?
What? It's a one car. Yes, in fact, it was the one that's there now is a 2-car garage. This is now just going to be an 18-foot wide 1-car garage. So the proportions are much nicer. It kind of stays with the.
Are you able to pull up the application itself?
Pardon?
The application with the design. I tried to get it on my phone. I thought I had printed it out, but I got a couple other pages instead. Yeah, but I was just wondering what the design of the new garage was going to look like.
I have to apologize. I didn't realize we were here for that. I thought we were here for the demolition of the garage that was there because it was considered to have been moved around the same time that the house had been moved. We knew that the house was an older structure. The garage is not.
So there aren't any designs for the garage then?
There is. In fact, the building department has it, but like I said, I didn't.
Okay,
it's not a landmark.
It's usually that's the old garage, of course. I like the windows. But that's usually we get.
Right. It's for the demolition. I don't
the
know
existing plan
and.
Well,
sometimes we do, not always.
The other question is, the garage is really not historic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not.
I thought it was
the house. The house was not originally there. It was moved there.
Oh, I got that.
Yeah, in the 1970s. So you kind of you know,
The-
looking for.
The AYB was 1920, so I don't, not that that's the age.
Yeah,
No, I just heard that there was some concerns about it, and so I wanted to make sure that I inquired.
well, I have no concerns about the demolition of the garage myself, so, I don't know if any,
No, let that
It's not
go.
historic.
Oh, I will, I just,
No, I'm not
If I
expecting it,
say-
let it go.
so. Is there a consensus then, that it's,
No objection.
no objection?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay, that's good, all right. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you for sticking around and through thick and thin. So, 14 Ridge Road, Shinnecock Hills.
Vicki and I went out and made a site visit this past week. And thank you for the pictures, Vicki. They are really interesting. It's a very small stucco house. The AYB is 1929. That appears to be accurate because the first time it's shown is on the 1930 aerial map and with disturbed land. So this is part of, as a whole, that Shinnecock development. This is part of the amended map A from 1925. It's lot 3, block 102. And I did have a copy of the subdivision map, the one that there was a Jerry Johnson was the selling agent, had published. And this one had no name on it. So that was my indication in 1925, it was most likely a vacant lot. But it also would have probably gone up to auction at right around 1925. And it was built by 1929. So my guess is the original owner, who we do not, I wasn't able to find that. I mean, I Googled lot 3, block, I mean, I went through all the, historic newspapers, even with lot numbers, to see if I could pull up something. But, so we're not sure who built it. It appears to be built in 1929. You can take, that's a Flemish pattern chimney, which is also leaning a little bit to the left. But what you can see on the left-hand side was they came back in, I think, 2014 for a work done as added bathroom. So you can see the flat roof dormer that just sort of pops out. And when you go upstairs, it's really, the upstairs is much smaller than I pictured, but there's a little step up, and that is a bathroom. So that would be, somebody built that, and they came back, right, in 2014 for the as-built second bathroom. Forgot to mention the little roof rafters coming out. But it was built, it looked like to me, possibly in the style of the Art Village, arts and crafts,
Yeah,
similar
because
to the things
it
we
has-
saw there, but,
It has a craftsman look.
right.
Yes.
But, so you could, the reason I say that is you go farther up
Not
Ridge
that
Road,
bathroom
and there are
part.
3 significant
rest of it.
properties that were built in the 1890s of students of William Merritt Chase, a little farther up the road, which are in AKRF, and I actually got to go a tour of one through the Historical Museum house tour. But so this, I thought, well, maybe this was like a carriage house and it was moved down, but it's not. When you go into the interior, it does not date to the 1890s. It
Simple
dates.
craftsman, it's a simple craftsman bungalow.
Right, so it was not, so I was thinking, well, maybe it was moved there, but I'm not thinking that, but that's not what we found. When you go inside, you can see the dark wood, you can see the window, they have original windows, those are on the interior pictures. Everything dates pretty much to the inside. They had 6/1, windows on the inside, the dark wood frames. You can see the Flemish pattern chimney, the arched doorway with the wood trim, still have the wood baseboards, the dark wood stairs, but all dating, more to the 20s. And then when you go to the rear, it was actually built on a sloping site. So it has the basement 2-car garage and cement block, and it wasn't placed on that from any place else. So it all dates pretty much to that. What the proposal is, he specifically bought it because he was looking at the owner met us graciously to build, is to remove the whole house but keep the basement and build on top of it.
That foundation. So beautiful.
Trying to think, I would the interesting of the area. I mean, the area has an interesting history, but not the house itself architecturally, or there's no historic significance. The first person that I could find, well, there was the Pribble family had it for a number of years until probably around 2022. And by Googling that, while doing the search in the historic newspapers, it appears that the Pribble family inherited it from Marie and an Edward J. Muller, who died in 1974. They were married in 1923. His mother died a couple years, I think, before the 1949 date that I see him. So my guess, he may have come into some money. They were from the Queens area. He came out. He had been a no children in the 30s. He was in Flushing, Queens as an electrician. 40s was a chauffeur for a private family. And by 1950, he lived on Ridge Road, and he was a boat captain. So I assume it was down in the Hampton Bays area. When he passed away, it would have gone to his nephew, Edward Pribble. He was lived from 1918 to around 1992. They did a 2-lot subdivision with the property would be to the right. Looking at that photo, it's 51 Hill Station, new house, 2005. I think it's still in possibly the Pribble family. Did the 2-lot subdivision in 1989. And I think the only other miscellaneous articles I find, there were a lot of fishing going on. They're catching a lot of bass or whatever, porgies, whatever was going through. But there was nothing architecturally or historically that we found.
Going through the house, I really had no objection to this because there is nothing left that's architecturally distinguishable. There's been a lot of hodgepodge, little repairs and additions here and there, and certainly where the bathroom was added on didn't add anything to the house. The owner
It was to the rear, though. That was a plus.
The owner is an experienced builder. He says he's going to retain the foundation. I kind of doubt it. I think it's going to cost him more to do that than to try and redo. That photograph is a nice looking photograph. It doesn't look this good. I know. I was like amazed. I said, goodness, that really looks good, doesn't it? But that's not the way it looks when you tour the house. It's also a very, very small house.
Yeah.
So the photographs are
misleading.
quite distinct.
Wide angle lens.
I think wide angle lens does wonders. That's right, and the ceilings are very low.
Yeah.
And the upstairs is even smaller.
The upstairs is not livable at all.
And I think they might have used the dining room to the right. It was used as a rental property, I think, for several. I mean, there were a couple rental permits on that, but
yeah, it was rental.
It's hardly a second story there.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
the couple little rooms up there. The downstairs actually makes the downstairs look large. But, there are no objection, to the demolition, and it is not in any survey that I've ever found. I would like to recommend that if you donate any, offer for donation if anybody was interested in those 6/1 windows. I don't necessarily see that happening, but as a possible recommendation, but.
Well, if you do the response, would not object to you including that as a suggestion.
That's it, but it's no objection to the demolition, so I'll do the response. and-
Okay. All right, so, let's see, why don't we try 13 Oka Lane? Sorry to keep you for the late show.
Okay, thank you.
Miguel Weinstein, architect. Good evening, members of the board. Ms. Chang Ji is the owner of 13 Ocker Lane, and her late father, Roger San, have been part of the art village since 1972. All the neighbors that know Mrs. Chang, they know that she's a really respectful and honorable person, and that she loved her house, and that all the time she wanted to preserve the character of the original cottage. At the same time, she deserved to be able to live in a house that was livable with insulation in the walls, sewage, plumbing, and safe electrical wires that they didn't have. The new application is almost identical to the design that was approved by this board in January of this year. These small changes to the design were created in an effort to appease the concern of the owner of the property on the east side at 11 Ocker regarding compliances with the zoning side yard regulations. The new proposed home is located 12 foot 8 inches away from the east side property in compliance with all the side yard regulations. And furthermore, the proposed building complies with all the zoning regulations, including the sky exposure pyramid regulations. We received some comments from two of the members from the board, and we tried to incorporate the suggestions into our design. We added diamond lattice window grills, and we also incorporated a chimney into the design, and we adjusted some window sizes. The front south facade resembles the original cottage. The staggered roofs are going to provide a transition between the original structure and the roof lines from the rear, and that will avoid overpowering the original proportions. To this side, an existing private hedge, a privet hedge, screens the view of the proposed east facade, and we are proposing to add a secondary privet hedge in our property to create a more dense landscape and a barrier to provide further privacy from the street and from the neighbor to the east. Mrs. Chang Ji and I appreciate your work and your guidance, and thank you very much.
I didn't see a site plan. I mean, saw the one where it's against the property line, but I thought it was gonna be moved. Is that where it's going to be like that?
No.
We didn't get, what? It doesn't help. It should be part of the application.
All the application was complete.
Well, the application does not have the site plan in it.
Here's the site plan.
But that doesn't give me a lot of confidence when I don't see it in the packet.
I gave a full set of drawings.
Last time, you
That's
provided
not
an
the correct
earlier,
site
there was
plan.
an earlier version of it that.
It is an earlier
Yeah.
version. It's not.
No, the updated version you got at a previous time.
Right, but we didn't get the one where it's going to be now.
I think so.
We did. It's in here. I was able to download it.
Is that in this packet?
It was on the portal, it was part of the
Okay.
stuff that was posted,
If
I
if
downloaded
it
it.
was in the old one, if it was in this one. Okay. This is last time, I think, because this one doesn't have the solar panels on it. The one that Bill reviewed didn't have solar panels. And this west side has solar panels, and that's how I know that's a different packet.
It's
Well, I assume it is. Because this one has solar panels on the west side. And vents.
You don't have a copy of the set of drawings that we sent the last application?
What we received this time doesn't match what we reviewed in the pre-application.
No, we made some corrections to the pre-application because there were some suggestions by the members of the board, so, and we submitted a revised drawings.
You know, it's more than that, it's the solar panels and all
Right.
the little vents coming out of it. Well, of course, the chimney's in this one too, Bill had
Right.
pointed out you didn't put the chimneys in the other
Correct,
one.
so the
But
chimney
this one
is
has
there.
solar panels on the west side. At least the way I read.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, the
that's in the
chimney
current
was
one.
added in
Don't you just-
for the last revision.
Right, but then, I actually thought they would be on the roof.
Yeah,
of
but
the
the
site
site
plan.
plan doesn't usually show it.
A roof plan.
Yeah, the roof plan.
I mean, there may be other changes, but when I saw those, that
There
one.
it is, yeah. So it is
That's
there.
only a partial, I just printed a few of the pages out.
Ed? Ed?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's in the old one.
Site plan.
right, the new
Yeah.
one doesn't have that.
What we received on the portal on 10-3, which is when the email went out with the notification, is the site plan with it up against the property line.
Oh, is it?
So-
We're just looking at it.
Yeah. So I don't know if something's uploaded and we
This
didn't
one.
get notification it was uploaded and we would have had to have manually checked.
He's got a different one.
But I don't think that works that
This
way.
was, okay, this was sent earlier, but this is the current site.
Ed?
Ed?
Ed, there's a question.
Please look. Alright.
Looking for the,
Gotcha.
there's no, I can't
This
find
is
an
the old one.
updated
This is
site
the
plan
ones that
on
we-
the,
Or-
The old
Yeah.
this application has
Exactly.
the old,
Then we send a site plan, yeah, this has a
Yeah, that
chimney.
has the site plan,
Yeah, well,
but
this
that
is,
was
this is
the one.
elevations, I think she's
That's
talking
the
about
old
site
one,
plan,
it's not the new, the current one.
like this,
That's the site plan, correct.
right, but this was in the
Yeah.
previous
The
submittal.
current one has the old site plan, but the one that you reviewed before has the proposed site plan. But not the solar panel.
Okay, well, I don't have the updated site plan visually
It
here.
wasn't, they didn't upload it.
Yeah.
Because we don't put it in there, they did.
All right, yeah, what's in there is the site plan for the old building, but not the,
That's a survey, we submitted a site plan with the entire package of the drawings.
You
and,
submitted it to the portal,
I submitted to Nicole, and
to the portal or hard copy?
we submitted to the portal and, yeah, to the portal.
Well, it's not showing up in the portal. So,
She said that she received it, that's all. I submitted and she returned an email saying that she got it, so
well, that's what she got, was that old site plan.
that's, was revised.
Yeah, all that I have is the old site plan, yeah. So,
With the application dated with the application dated 10/2. With the application dated October 2nd.
the application
Is
date,
dated October 2nd. It has the site plan with the building against the property line and these elevations.
right, so it
There's
doesn't
nothing
have the
else.
new site.
Correct.
Right, that's what I see as well. So,
And there's a member of the public that has a
right,
comment.
and so first of all, is there a desire by the board to have an updated site plan in order to understand?
Well, I think if the people don't have the updated west elevation with solar panels, they might want to look at that. Yeah.
Well, I think it makes
We do
sense.
have
We do have that.
That was in the application. What wasn't in the application was the
Right,
updated site
exactly.
plan. But that is.
But the one Stephanie was looking at had the different west elevation.
So, I mean, we're absent one piece of significant information in my estimation in terms of the siting of a new structure on the property. So that's one element here. You had something that you wanted to provide.
Yes, if I
Why don't you give us some information what you want to,
Okay, I spent hours trying to
yeah,
figure
get
all
up
this
and
out.
identify yourself.
Okay. My name is Linda Riley. I'm an attorney, and I appeared before you before, and sent in letters before. I have other people from the art colony who are here too, but specifically to address this, I spent a lot of time trying to piece together the elevations that were in your portal. I put in any number of information requests because I also checked the building department portal. And in the building department portal, with the building permit application, there are other things that aren't in your portal, which took me a while to put together. And I called Nicole about 6 times, I think, saying, this isn't everything. You don't have everything here. And we just didn't have, anyway, the site plan has been drawn. It's in the building permit file that is in the building permit and the GIS, that portal. And it's not just the solar panels. There's a whole new wing that's been added to the back that to me looks like a train pulling out of a station. It's a long, narrow, skinny thing that juts out toward the north end, which they've done instead of the old addition that was along the side of the road. That was along the side of the property, literally to the side of the property. I have a memo. I mean, I know it's getting late, and I think you're going to ask him to submit some more stuff. I would really like to submit this. I did submit it to Nicole. May I pass out these I understand, I think it's going to be adjourned.
This is your November 19th?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you all have it?
It was emailed to all of them.
It was sent
Okay.
to everybody.
Okay.
Yep.
It was just today.
Okay. I just want to say that there is a real dearth of specifications here. To someone's point before about how they say it's going to be one thing and then it turns out it's something else. And in a community like this that is such a treasure, and
with this particular lot, which is surrounded by original contributing R Colony bungalows, you know, they're across the street, they're next door. It is so important, particularly given how this was, you know, basically destroyed without any permits or any application, to make an attempt to fit in with the properties around it that are treasures in terms of the history of the buildings, the cultural history, and everything else. I think you need a lot of specifications here. I was shocked at how few specifications there are in terms, it just says, you know, wood. It doesn't specify windows, exactly what they're gonna be. I don't know, you know, it goes on and on and on. There are vents all over the roof. I don't know what they're for. And I think it's very important that you get specifications and that you also don't be enslaved by your prior approval. Your prior approval was done with the interest and with an eye towards saving as much of the original structure as possible. And that was stolen from you. The original structure was, you know, blown up and torn down in the middle of the night, or in one day it was all carted off the site. So now you have a chance to do something that it's going to be a whole new building. We know he's going to have a right to a new building. I don't dispute that. But there's a chance to do something that is compatible now with the ones that are next door and across the street. He could pull that building line toward the north a bit more. He could build out the back toward the north, keeping the setbacks that are required, and do something. But the height of it now, particularly with all of those gables, is really, really a shame. All the houses around it have second floors, and I put pictures in here too. The houses around it have second floors that are tucked in under the eaves on the second floor, if there is a second floor. And they're all low-lying, slung, you know, low-slung roofs, some of them hips, some of them gables, but there's nothing that comes up like a third story. Now all of a sudden here, it looks like a third story. If you look on the north elevation, there's a whole attic area with a dormer on the third floor. I mean, what happened? I mean, you have a chance now to bring it back. And given what the neighborhood is and how precious the neighborhood is, I think you ought to take the opportunity to do that. I think the height's a problem. The sheer mass of it is a problem. And now that you're not saving one board from the original house, let's see if let's see if we can honor the things that were the most notable and distinguishable, like the front facade with the porch and the way the front facade lined up with the corbels and keep that like predominant. It predominated before, it was prominent before, because any of the additions that had been put on later were toward the back. So it didn't like crowd up the porch and that little masterpiece that it was. The new plans show the house being added on both sides, 6 feet, right behind the porch. The porch is only 6 feet deep. And then the new plans show the addition going on with the whole first floor and a second floor over it, just right behind the front porch. It's not, you should take a look at the old photos. You've got them all, I don't want to bore you, it's not boring, but I don't want to you've got all the history reports, I know, in your files about the colony. You've got the pictures of the houses that are right around it. You know the history, and you know what we're trying to preserve there. And this is, to me, putting a carbuncle in the middle of a charming old neighborhood. So I would argue that you should get a site plan, yes, but you should also not get something that was submitted before and approved because you were trying to save original building materials. That it's just lazy to submit that same thing with these extra solar panels and whatever. He should rethink it.
In essence, your criticism is a lot about the scale of the house relative to surrounding properties and the village itself.
And I would argue for reconstructing or rebuilding the front facade, that porch, the gable roof, the hip roof, the hip roof, the corbels that were right over. The porch was amazing. It had squared off columns. They weren't columns, they were squares. Wood shingled with kind of matching corbels over the top. You could see it's just that front little part there that's kind of, you can't even, but it had a ton of charm and was very distinctive, and it's what shows on all the pictures. That should, and then if they want to, bring something out more toward the back, I'm not going to design it for them. It's not, but we object to the sheer height of it. Even I know it meets the zoning code, but when we're talking about a neighborhood like this, a historic district like this, it's not just about meeting the zoning code. And by the way, they do have a variance application that was granted for pyramid relief. So doesn't quite.
Okay, thanks for the comments.
I just have to clarify, they are representing 11 Ocker that used to be the location of Laugh-A-Lot. Yes. And on 2016, the same attorney was here trying to demolish Laugh-A-Lot. And she presented that the application. And you moved it because somebody saved that house. But I don't understand what's the problem of the neighbor with the owner of 13 Ocker. We tried to listen to their complaints. That was that the existing house that was there was too close to their property. Didn't have to comply with the zoning setbacks because it was at some point part of Laugh-A-Lot that was cut and so on. But because of that, we brought the house to comply with the side yard setback, and the owner, Mrs. Chang Ji, is trying to be understanding of the neighborhood and from the neighbor, and we're trying to do a house that complies with the setbacks, and I don't understand what you are trying to
Okay, well,
to bring up.
let me turn back to my board members here. You made an inquiry of us for any comments.
Correct, yes.
On the proposal, and there were two comments that were made, one by Bill Hine and the other by Samantha. Yours was about a desire for diamond pattern windows in the windows in the new building. That would be an appropriate place reflecting the character of the old building that once was there. There is some pattern shown for diamond windows on the on this rendering that we have here. That is the intent to carry forward with diamond pattern windows in the building.
We, from the pictures that we found, from the latest pictures that we found from this house, that front dormer had that the square pattern, didn't have any diamond. If the board feels that there should be diamond on that dormer on the front, on the second floor, we could change it to diamond pattern. We have no objection to it. From other houses in the art village, we saw the pattern that the second floor was the one that carries that diamond grills on the second floor, and that's what we did in the proposed design.
Bill, you had some comment about roof lines, as I recall, maybe from a while back.
Yes, there seemed to be some, between the side elevations and the front elevation, there seemed to be some things that didn't quite line up, but they have been corrected.
In the new elevations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in the latest.
Let me just mention the solar panels. This is a requirement that the building department is forcing us to add into the structure to comply with the new energy codes. So we put them in the back of the, so nobody from the street could see them. They are facing the west, in the back of the building. So from the street, you'll never be able to see that there are solar panels there. We don't like them either, but because we have to comply with the new energy codes, we have to include them in the structure, and they will not be visible from the street.
I will say that we continually confronting the question of solar panels that are showing up on roofs because of energy stipulations.
Correct.
From different sources.
I don't like them either, but we are being forced to include them to comply with the energy codes. Southampton has one of the most strict energy codes in the state.
Well, I think one of the things we would like to have is that site plan that.
Yeah, of course. The whole package, I don't understand
Right.
why you don't have it. Yeah.
Well, if it's just the site plan, I don't know, we have a lot of the package.
I'll resubmit a complete full package just so we
Okay.
know that I will put everywhere the new dates so everybody knows which package they are looking, so there is no confusion of the oldest and newest.
Just with respect to trying to develop a consensus of opinion with.
I'll keep it very brief. Please. I just want to say that the comments on the last time around were before the house was demolished. That was a plan for an addition on the back of the existing house. And those comments about the diamond painted windows and the roof line were all in relation to saving the front of the house. That is not a consideration anymore, number one. And number two, you have to know that there was a stipulation. They were brought to court after demolishing the house without any permits. And it's part of their stipulation, and that they have to comply with any requirements or conditions that you put on it. And to the point that was made earlier, you don't, the question of diamond panes in the window begs the question. He used the word grills. Do we want grills on the second floor? Probably not. What was in the original house was true divided lights with the diamond panes windows. I don't care about the diamond panes particularly. I don't want that to be my whole argument. But my argument is that you should have really in writing in terms of specifications that he submits exactly what kind of cedar, is the roof going to be asphalt or is it going to be cedar? It says one thing in the application to you that it's going to be wood shingles. When he submitted it to ARB, it says asphalt. You should be careful, and you have an opportunity here to put down exactly what the conditions are. You can work it out with him. I'm not for doing something that's appropriate with this neighborhood under these circumstances, particularly in light of the court order. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've had enough for the debate for the evening for tonight. Let's just try to get a path forward with respect to process that we understand we'll do and that the applicants will understand. So we'll get an updated package, the right material, and we will devour it for assessment, and we will make sure it gets to be the first item on our agenda in December. Is that something board members are agreeable to?
Has there been ARB approval?
And apparently, we'll have to check other information, including ARB, and David's making a note about checking the language of the stipulation. So I've got eyes in the back of my head. So if that's okay, we understand the consideration associated with some of the concerns about scale and those issues, and we'll get another chance to assess and discuss this in December. So I think we can put this to bed tonight, and we'll get the information that we need to more fully understand what's the process here for treating this application. So.
Because this is unprecedented.
Pardon?
This is unprecedented.
Yes, the other, clearly, there's been all these different circumstances that we're certainly not experienced with, and that presents problems, as well as, I've watched sometimes the planning board and the ZBA referee fights between the applications they receive and neighbors along the way. But this is a new experience for us to engage on an issue like this. So we're on a learning curve too. I did receive your email, and that will be part of our records here. I did receive another letter from another party, which just came in tonight as well, and the board hasn't seen it, and so we'll have to process this information as well along the way. So I think that's the best we can do tonight.
Okay.
And and thanks for the cooperation to keep us somewhat, hopefully more in the loop, but asking for some opinions and reflections prior to making some of the decisions that might be involved in the design or citing of the questions that have been raised.
And I would like to get a copy of whatever somebody else.
Yes, well, send it along. I haven't read it yet.
Right, right. So we have also, again, we are trying to work with the board, and we're trying to work with the neighbors. But the owner has the right to have a house, and we are trying to do that. That's all we're trying to do.
Okay, with that, we'll put this agenda item to bed. And this was your agenda interest as well? Okay. So,
There's some mess here too, but she had
fine. Okay, we have 219 Hildreth Lane.
Yep.
This, I think I can make short shrift for this application. This is in Bridgehampton. At somewhat of a busy location. Let me go here. The house has an addition plan mostly for a rear section of the house out of sight from the road. Okay. This house sits on a very narrow lot in Bridgehampton. And just to give you a location, this is Montauk Highway up here. This is School Street that runs down to the intersection of Church Lane, Hildreth Lane, and Sagaponack Road. One of several famous Bridgehampton nonlinear intersections or non-perpendicular intersections. The house sits at the end of this road, and it's kind of a busy intersection. People see the house when they travel on these roads, but the house is not old. It had an AYB of 1940, and the house was built in 1948. And it was built for the widow of a plumber by the name of Andrew Acker. Andrew Acker, A-C-K-E-R. And it's a very small house. One would, see it, see its size appropriately there. So, in effect, technically, it's not something we find we would review. But even so, because this is potentially part of a increasing historic district residential expansion, that it should be in somewhat character or keeping, so that wouldn't help disturb the sense of what historic homes and traditional homes would be like in the community. And in looking at the application, I don't find that there's anything of merit. I should say that just looking at, just to give you a quick view of the proposal, it's basically, as you can see, these houses sit close together. And the addition is basically something that will be in a rear area of the house away from the street. So it's not something that would be easily seen as well. And just to verify the application.
My only question when you pull that up, were those skylights to the front or the back? I thought it was large skylights.
They are to the front.
Okay.
North elevation. Well, it's kind of odd because in addition, look at the footprint.
Well, the addition that we're talking about on the back that has this,
So this is an
has these big
existing
windows, this is not the street-facing side.
Basically, this they're
Um,
cutting these into.
Well, this, yeah, this is a street-facing, well,
It's pretty
let
narrow.
me get my
Oh, okay.
map here.
That side, yeah.
Here's the map.
Looks like that one that was on that other house.
But it exists.
So here's the addition, this is the back of the house here. This is the
It's on the back.
street-facing side, Hildreth Lane. And the proposed addition is to go here on the rear of the house and to put a deck in as well behind the house. So
It's the front of the same volume. It's the west end.
basically you're not going to be seeing, these are simulations. You're not going to be seeing that from the street, any change in the facades, no.
I just thought I saw the skylights on the proposed and not on the other, but you're okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I don't see it as particularly problematic in this house, and space in these small cottages that were built is always problematic in terms of new owners, you know. So if there's no objection, I will file a no objection for 219 Hildreth Lane. 10 Sagamore Road, Hampton Bays is a house that was worked on before, kind of a partial work done house. This is the house with the stop work order on it.
They're working,
What's that?
they're working, they were working last Wednesday. I drove by it or after.
They were working on it?
That was
Send
the
an
former.
SOS thing to the code enforcement.
Like windows?
You
That
observed
looks like
it?
some-
Do you know the
It's
SOS?
over the
I
windows.
saw them working on it, but
Oh,
with everything else going on, I
There's the chimney.
figured
It's like the chimney's gone.
nobody's seen this.
Sagamore Hill Road.
Doesn't seem.
Wow. They had a number on that. Because the chimney's completely gone.
In any
It's
case,
tacked on.
Ed, there's someone on Zoom for this,
there is someone, thank you, Peter.
whenever you want.
Yes, put them on.
So again, this is 1940. It's right on the house.
Yeah, I know. I think, yeah. 1940. Looks like all the historic fabric is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
It doesn't look particularly historic. Now why? It's been done.
It's basically unrecognizable from what it was before.
The house sits in a commercial type area. It's next to a boatyard.
Yeah,
I
It's a different area down there.
yeah, should just give you a,
Good evening.
good evening. We hear
Yeah,
you,
yes, I'm the owner of Tin Sagamore.
right? Okay. Would
Yeah.
you identify your name and where you're from?
My name is Alan Fajardo, and I'm from the town of Brentwood, New York.
Okay.
So I'm here to answer any questions you guys might have on the property.
Are you the owner or a representative?
I'm the owner, sir.
You're the owner, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the house was being worked on apparently without the proper permit.
I purchased the property as is. It was the only thing that I was working was the only thing that I touched was the exterior of the property, which was the siding. The roof was somehow done, half of the roof. That's the way I bought the property. It was gutted out from the inside
Oh.
by the previous homeowner.
So, are there people presently working on the site?
We were securing some of the, because we have put some of the paper, and the only thing that was being worked on was just the siding. Nothing else, the interior is still untouched,
So,
as they found it.
but there is a stop work order on it.
Yes, that's a stop work order because of the weather, because, it's been raining and everything. So it's damaging the paper that was already put into the house.
Yeah.
For the siding. So all we're doing was just the siding, nothing, no structure has been done. Nothing has been added to the property. Everything's, the bedroom size still the same size. Nothing has been done as far as the interior. Exterior was the only thing that was completed. The siding. And to do siding, you don't need a permit for it.
So, okay, all right, thank you for that information.
The interior is still as is, as far as the stop work order was put in. But a purchase of property was a halfway demo.
So, okay, board members, as you can see, this is a commercial industrial neighborhood, so
AYV's 1940.
the AYB is 1940, and actually, I looked at the 1938 map, and you could see that it was cleared, and it looked like the house was there in the 1938 aerial. So, but anyway, it's basically about that period
I
of time.
like the old windows, but they're all
Right.
brown,
So, with respect to what's been changed, and, what is offered, I don't see any reason to object. And Susan, you saw
I
the
agree.
structure, so you agree?
It's
Is
gone.
there any other kind of consideration to be found?
No.
I don't see any, so I'll respond to the building department. We have no concerns about this. The only other thing I might say is that to take care of any issues of enforcement with respect to the appropriate activity on this house. So if that's okay with everybody?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll send our response back to the building department with no concerns.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Right. Thank you, good night.
Good evening.
Okay. 89 Cobb Road.
Can I
Vicky
just
and
step in for a moment here on 89 Cobb Road? Susan and I did go to visit the property this week. However, Susan and I did go to see the property this week. However, I'd like to defer this discussion to the next meeting because the information, the architectural documentation that we received was inadequate and misleading. So we need to get some corrected data from the property owner and her architect in order to even
So it's
comment
your
on this.
recommendation that we deem this incomplete?
Yes.
With respect to certain needed information which you
Yes,
will
we will get it.
identify
Yes.
and
Yes.
identify to Nicole?
Yes.
And we'll proceed from there for the next meeting?
Yep.
Is that okay? All right, fine. Okay. Just as a reference for the agenda business, we did send back a response on 670 Montauk Highway, Queog, and 107 South Country Road, basically adjoining parcels with respect to a subdivision and planned development, multi-family development that's taking place there. And there was no problem with that. I don't, I assume, I sent the communications, I assume they were processed, so. 20 Wood Trail, Flanders was,
That was passed on a full
initial
review.
review
Overview.
was passed.
Right.
As soon as it came out.
Not worthy of a full review. Yeah, I'm glad you're still awake.
Yeah, it's just because when Nicole does the minutes, she's gonna wanna hear you mention everything on the agenda.
Yes, okay. That's good to keep reminding me about. The other, we did the two pending landmarks. 520 Montauk Highway is still up in the air. The Stony Brook Southampton windmill is probably even further up in the air. And no news on 11 Walnut Avenue. And no news on 149.
Nope.
There is news on 126.
126. They're landmarked, and they now want to obtain a historic facade easement. So I put them in touch with Jackie Fenlon over at CPF, and she has responded, so the ball is in that court.
Okay, and you might keep your finger on the tempo of.
I think the property owners and I will all keep an eye.
Now that I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, there's someone, the architect for 89 Cobb, and just wanted to talk, I don't know if that's open.
The architect for
89 Cobb, maybe just
89
defer.
Cobb. Oh, okay. Is he still on?
Yeah, it's still
Okay.
on.
Been adjourned.
Alright, they're coming on now.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, this is CEO Liu. I'm the architect for 89 Cobb Road, and I was just wondering what is needed for as an additional information for 89 Cobb Road.
Good evening. I'd appreciate it if you could send us the existing conditions, floor plans that you were working for the existing historic house, okay?
Okay, you
And
want
that-
floor plans of existing house?
Yes,
as
the
it
ones
is
that
now.
you use to prepare your demolition plan and your first floor construction plan,
Okay.
okay?
Okay, and the other thing I'm interested in is something, I'm concerned about the brick basement, and that wall being taken out. And I really feel there ought to be some type of evaluation, engineer's report to ensure its stability. If
Susan
if
is
the
asking for an
old
engineer's
foundation,
report.
It's the brick cellar. It looks like it's gonna be opened up to, open into the new basement. And that concerns me just after what happened, in the art village.
Okay.
So.
That's more like a structure thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Structural engineers report.
And I think we will put this in writing
Yeah.
to a memo to you with what is needed. It'll come
Okay.
from our landmarks communications person,
Okay.
okay?
All right.
All right,
Thank you so
very
much.
much for the attention and for sticking around to be here for our treatment of this.
Yep, I've been listening. At the beginning was very interesting.
I'm glad you found it interesting.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
Right.
Okay.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Okay, quickly moving on, the basic piece of business is to recognize that Vicky has composed, gathered, edited communicated the annual report of
submitted.
the Landmarks Board.
Submitted, that's what it is.
Submitted, okay.
Yay.
As
Congratulations.
and first time exercise, and I think done very well. Thank you very much for stepping forward and doing that.
And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to review and for all your comments and edits that were very good.
Very good, yeah.
And of course, Susan's number counting also comes in
Vicky's
handy
doing
too.
her own system though, so I supplement, but she's got,
So,
we'll
yeah.
talk about that the next time.
Right.
She's doing a good
And
job.
the fact was, it was submitted to SHPO, whose regional authority is also in a role of first-time reviewer.
Yes.
And so probably knows absolutely nothing about what goes on in Southampton town, so a lot of things kind of have to be spelled out and explained in such kinds of reports. So some detail is often important. And the supervisor was pleased with the submission that went forward. So again, thank you very much for fielding it. Is there any other business?
1 minute, you can make 10:30, no.
There is no other business before the board from members or anyone. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for
29 and a
persistence.
half. I wouldn't have made 10:30.